I mean, I'm
We're joined by Travin.
All right, Travin, come on down. We're going to give Max a break, maybe give Ben a break.
Come
He
on
can fix his
down.
voice or something.
Yeah, sorry for the seat problem here, but
No
happy to
problem.
be here.
Yep, we've got.
So did you get your luggage back?
Yeah, finally.
Oh, good.
Yeah, one of the organizers drove all the way back to the airport to get it.
Oh,
It's nice for them to do that for me.
That's cool. Yeah.
what happened to your luggage? Why was it delayed?
Well, despite a decent layover in Frankfurt and the flight delay, yeah, they lost my bag when I got to the airport. They're like, "Are you one of these 3 people?" Like, yes. Yeah, we lost your bag, so. It's like, okay, your bag will arrive tomorrow in the evening because there's no other flight apparently coming here for Frankfurt. So, yeah, descended. And yeah, the guy at the airport fell asleep, so he wasn't able to call us back or answer our calls when we asked, "Where's my bag?"
Classic.
The next day. So, yeah. But it's normal for me, unfortunately. As long as I got here, I'm pretty happy about that. And
Yeah.
also, yeah.
Yeah, I love the delays. It's always a delay when you don't need it. When I'm 2 hours early and I'm there at the airport, it's always like we're delayed. But when I'm an hour late and a horrible car crash keeps me from the airport, there's never a delay. They're always on time then. Although I don't know that I've flown in a flight that didn't have an hour delay with it recently.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I've been seeing
It's
it.
getting pretty bad, man. And they're like these little hour-and-a-half flights where hour and a half plus you got to get there 2 hours early if you want to check a giant bag full of electronics gear. And then get delayed an hour. So I'm waiting 3 hours for something that takes an hour and a half. It gets really frustrating.
Yeah. Speaking of delays, there's one time I was quite early for a train ride. Actually, I was there 2 hours early. And they said, "Oh, we're going to be about 30 minutes late." So, I'm not going to the platform because it's going to be 30 minutes. So I'm like, I think I was at a coffee shop or something, just drinking coffee. And they're like, "Okay, the train's down here. It's going to leave 30 minutes from now." So I'm waiting. And then I figured, 15 minutes after, I'm going to go to the train. Because why not? Let's just get on. Yeah, it went from a 30-minute delay to a 15-minute delay right as I got on the platform and tried to press the button to get in. And the train started moving. It's just like,
yeah.
And it's just like, what the hell?
I know from experience, it's only when you give up and you get out your laptop and you start working, and you're like, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to focus in.
Mm-hmm.
You put your headphones on. That's when the airplane's ready to leave.
Yep.
The rest of the time, you're like all panicky, looking at it. It never moves. But
it always happens to be when I'm running late in the morning, and I think, oh no, I'm not going to get the later train. I'll get on this train, and I run down to the station. I'm all sweaty, and then it's delayed like half hour, and I might as well have just stayed in bed. Oh, devastating.
I did so there's a house which came up for sale near where we live, and it's our dream house, and it's in the dream area, and it came for sale as an auction. So it's a little bit run down, needed some work doing to it, but it's this fantastic house. And I was really keen on trying to get a bid in on this house because it wasn't going for much either. It was great. But my daughter was very young, she's a baby at the time, and my partner was ill, so I had to take my daughter to the auction. So I thought I'd get there really early. So I got there like 3 hours early. I was there before anyone else. And then it got to the actual time of the auction, and the auctioneer was stuck in traffic. And then she was like another 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And I had my little baby with me, and she'd done a poo, so it stank. So I said to the organizer, I said, "Look, I got to change this baby's nappy. It's just, is it okay if I just nip to the toilet? I'll be 2 minutes and then come back." And she was like, "Yeah, it's fine. The auctioneer won't be here by then." I was like, "Okay." So I went to the toilet. I changed the nappy, right? I went back, and as I was walking back, everyone's walking out of the room. No, they're walking out of the room, and I'm like, "Has it been cancelled?" And they're like, "No, we sold it."
Oh,
this guy bought it for nothing, and it was all because I was changing this pooey nappy, and I was like, oh. So I could blame the baby, I could blame my partner for being ill, I could blame a whole host of things, but it was that, it's as soon as you think, okay, I'll do something else, you miss it.
But then again, I suppose is it confirmation bias that actually it's not like that, but you remember the bad times. Like it's not every time I run to the train that it's true. Late. That's true. It does seem to be like, oh, damn it.
It's a significant time which sticks out in your head.
Yeah. Except random checks at the airport for me, I've actually done like counting. It's supposed to be like less than 20% of the time that you get selected randomly, for that gunpowder testing. Well, right now, I've actually hit 5 counts of 5 times going through security not being checked. That didn't happen at all last year.
Yeah.
It always stopped at like 3 or 4 that I got randomly selected for an extra check.
So again, going back to the whole,
Proof.
because the problems you had with your visas and immigration and stuff, isn't it ridiculous that like surely if you're on a list of like, to check, surely they've searched you like hundreds of times now. They've asked for all your details hundreds of times.
Yep.
You're probably not going to be trying to screw the system.
It's this guy. He's all right. We'll let him in. Come on.
He's done this a lot of times, gone through a lot of shit. And it's like,
Yeah.
I've had they've got that fabric on it or whatever, and they touch it on you or whatever.
Yeah.
And it came positive for like explosives or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? No, definitely not. And then like did it again, and it still said it. And he's like, it very rarely does it twice. I was like, well, do it a third time, mate, because ain't no bombs here. And yeah, he did it, and it was fine. I was like sweating. Obviously, I didn't have anything, but the way it makes you feel, you're like, oh my god, what if somehow I accidentally like sat on something, or scary thought.
Wait, where was that?
That was the airport.
Which country?
UK.
Oh, it was UK, was it? Yeah. Because whenever I go to the US, I'm always scared of their power. To do a cavity search on you or something.
Well, they're
I don't
definitely
want to stick out.
whenever they use that little wand thing, they're always looking for explosive residue or whatever it is, which again, normal people never have.
Well, they shoot guns.
But what's so great is, like Dan's saying, they have right next to the machine is they have the test wand, right? And the test wand has explosive residue. And one time the guy was like, oh, I almost used the test wand on you. And I was like, that's so funny. Yeah, I could have gotten, totally taken to jail because you used the wrong wand.
I almost got the rubber gloves out.
So yeah, security is a great fun time always. The other nice game that I always play, because I always have a bag full of cables and laptops and electronics, and of course I separate whatever they say to separate. They never specify, but I always separate. But there's this moment where your bag goes through the x-ray machine and then it sits there, and it's the moment of truth, because they have these big pushers that come out. It's like a game show. So every time I'm like, is my bag gonna make it? And then most of the time it's like, and then you get pushed over to secondary screening, and somebody takes apart your bag and ruins your perfect organizational structure and gives you a dirty look. What I like is the comments. When I was in Italy, they're like, you sure have a lot of electronics. I was like, yep. And then another time it was like, you have a lot of USB cables. Yep. What am I going to say? It's my job or whatever, right? I got to charge things. I got to plug things in. It's what it's about.
Now they're worried that you'll use it to strangle people or something.
That's right. I'm just so fast.
I got one of my bags on the way out was double searched, and
romantic.
They had it was Apple Pencil that I hadn't taken out of the case, and they were like, you've got to take out all the electronics, and I was like, well, okay, well, that means I've got to go into my bag now and take out all the other electronics that aren't laptops and phones.
Have you seen some of the stuff which I bring? Just these bags, these kits, these wires, and all that crap. And then so I get there and they're like, is there any electronics in there? And I'm like, it's all electronics.
It's all electronics.
So when we empty it all into the bucket and you can sift through it. And then it's always full of, I always end up putting screwdrivers in it because I forget that you can't take those onto airplanes. So he's like, you can't have it on an airplane. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. And then he'll pull out like some wire clips. You can't have that. And then like a Stanley knife. You can't have that. And I'm like, man, I'm tooled up. And then you have to chuck them, and that's sad.
Yeah, I hate having to throw stuff.
Yeah, I lost my favorite caliper. Caliper's like an electronic measurement device thing, and they took that off me because they said I could use it to. It's like an axe, to be fair. I could have hit someone in there. But
it sounds like a children's book. My favorite caliper.
I might do it. Yeah, my favorite caliper. Time I got it taken from me at the airport.
It's weird though, like the 100 mil thing, for example. The fact that what's the point when you could just have 10 100 mils of explosives?
One I had is I put shampoo in like a little jar, like a little jam jar thing, and then she's like, you can't have this because it hasn't got a branded bottle, and I was like, what? Really? Well, so
yeah.
So I'm not going to
accept L'Oreal.
Yeah, I'm not going to put like explosives and poison in a branded bottle. That would be, so if I was going to smuggle in like something bad, like I'd put it in a branded bottle, wouldn't I? I wouldn't put a little jam. It's stupid.
Yeah. Again,
I love those moments though when you're hit with just just that kind of insane bureaucracy.
I love the
I know I'm right on this one. You're just being an asshole.
Yeah.
The best part is the 150 milliliters rule or whatever, as if you couldn't take whatever it is and pour it into 3 jars and then put it back together. It's like it's some kind of math problem. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I wanted more toothpaste, so I just brought more thing. I mean, it's right there.
There's a really good project, actually. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's worth checking. I think there's a device video of it. And it's a guy, and he makes weapons out of all the stuff you can buy in duty free. So the idea being, and he makes like a shotgun and like a little rocket launcher, because he gets like some sort of aerosol thing, and is able to make like a sort of rocket launch thing. And he makes these are all the weapons you could make up.
Yeah, very true.
So you go to duty free, you could buy all this like perfume, and then you could explosives. And then the idea being, you go to duty free, get all this stuff, go into the bathroom, and then do an 80. So yeah, but it kind of highlights the ridiculous nature of the humans traveling from one place to another, and
I mean, another part with the security check itself. So I know a security checker. Obviously, I'm not going to say their name for sharing this. She actually like manages the entire thing, and she's fairly young. And she mentioned that it's quite weird that I'm doing this, but it's because I have a high success rate with finding bad stuff during the test, not during like random people coming through. And I asked her like, "What's that? What's your rating?" She said like 92%. Wait. You're one of the top people, and you miss 8%. What are they doing?
wow, yeah, far out, man.
And there's like the minimum is like I think 80-something%.
Wow,
It's absurd because like you can't cover everything, and the way people are likely to take over a flight now is going to be something that's probably not been done before, rather than just the plain old I've got a knife or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And someone someone mentioned this, and I think it's a weird kind of thing to think about. But why, if there's absolutely billions that goes into airline security, what would be the cost if we didn't have all that money? Like, how often would a plane actually go down?
So
I actually have the cost benefit of just letting planes blow up every now and then.
Yeah.
I actually have an answer to that, and unfortunately, I have to take their side a little bit to do something because in the early days of aviation, the number of terrorist activities or just like stuff going on with hijacking it's fairly common in the 60s, like early 60s. You look at aviation, so I'm not saying remove everything, but clearly, like a lot of the inconveniences that people have today, is it worth what's being spent on? And what's the benefit, right? Like as you mentioned,
if we just like all boarded the plane naked, then that'd be fine, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's like there's so many like optimization methods of like pre-check and stuff like that. And if you have that already, then people should just literally be able to walk through. But even in the States, like what you can do is use a separate line, and you don't have to take your shoes off. That's it. And it's like that's just the only benefit for having like your background checked and getting all of your data and all of this. Like, you should be getting a lot more than that. You'd think.
But then I'd argue that I think that would be unfair for anyone to have an accepted status, because anyone can go nuts. Like
that's also true. Yes, absolutely.
It's absurd that someone's got a level of trust. It's like, well, okay, I've never killed anyone, so surely I have that same level of trust. You want my passport?
How are we on borders? Like, what do you think about borders? I don't want borders. I want to get rid of them completely. I like it in Europe when you like drive from Switzerland to Germany and you just wave at the guy and just drive through.
Oh, that's because you've never been stopped.
Yeah.
No, I was stopped actually going to Switzerland.
Okay.
They're really nice. Really, really, really,
oh, yeah, they were
really nice people. Really
it.
nice. But yeah. There's on that kind of oppression feel. But like when you fly into America and you have these horrible security.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you need security checks on place. But I mean, borders, not on a plane, but just borders, like having a strong border.
Well, I think that the fact that you, this is my girlfriend's term, you popped out of your mum's vagina in one place, it doesn't mean that that's where you should stay or where, and I think it's a good point. Like I grew up in England as a Catholic. If I grew up in somewhere else, I would have, like say in Pakistan, I would have been a Muslim. And this is just like where you're born and where you grow up, and I think that borders. I don't like the idea of borders, but I do think that with things like not the welfare system, NHS and stuff like that, that's already pretty bad. That if you have completely open borders, then the systems that you do have in place would decay. That's not because of the people that are coming in. It's the being able to deal with all the resources. But I would prefer if we didn't have any borders. I could go anywhere. Wasn't
Yeah, I think that's what you need to have.
Yeah, definitely.
As a holder of 9 visas on the passport right here,
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom of movement of people. I mean, that's how good, like, you know, look at like Greek Renaissance and all the great things that came out of ancient Greek times. That was because of trade routes and different peoples and different areas smashing together, and then all this like a smelting pot for ideas and innovation. So we need freedom of movement of people. But you still have cultural identity. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
But not to the point where I think it becomes nationalism and exceptionist ideology, where you can't come to my country because my country's great and you want to exploit us.
Yeah,
nationalism just being proud of something you didn't do yourself.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's a quote from somebody.
Yeah.
I have to cite that, but I don't remember their name.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. It is weird though, isn't it? How like people do have a pride for. I mean, I definitely don't have a pride for UK. I think it stinks. It's got so many bad things wrong with it, you know.
It's encouraged though. It's encouraged. So you're told wherever you live, you're told that your country's the best.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't think that, then you would revolt more, and you'd be like, you know, I want what that country's got over there.
Yeah.
So everyone thinks that I think, oh, you know, UK's the best, or if you live in America, oh, America's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the politicians, and they'll be like, well, you know, we're doing things right, but it's these other guys. You know, it's the Chinese, they're the ones who are polluting, or it's this, or the, you know, like, or it's the so. Or like with the EU and the Brexit stuff, you know, I think part of the reason that people wanted to vote to leave was because they had decades of any politician who couldn't explain why they couldn't do something without taking some blame.
Yeah.
They would say, the EU.
EU. Yeah.
And then we were all like, oh, that EU, God, let's get rid of it. So probably oversimplification of the whole thing, but we often sort of shift the blame onto other countries. And I think that's when you kind of get the exceptionist mentality. What you don't want is for that to snowball into war, which has happened a few times.
I do think though that the labelling of say Brexit people that voted Brexit, whatever you know, name want to call them,
or racist.
I do disagree with that concept, because I think there is or that statement, because obviously people vote for very many different reasons, but I think there's a difference between racism and say not xenophobia, but like not being able to they're not able to understand that when people come in, they don't like take the jobs, and they don't. I mean, obviously they actually.
I mean, they're also trying to protect culture, aren't they? So they're like, we have our culture, we want to try and protect it, and other people with other culture coming in, that's going to ruin our culture.
And I don't think those like people in particular are mean racists. I just think they're you get the same in every country. Everyone wants to preserve their culture. Well, in Wales, they speak Gaelic, you know, and people they intentionally have.
See, Welsh nationalism isn't racist at all. Welsh nationalism is very much just about the historical, cultural stuff. Like, I want Wales to be independent in the EU, but an independent country from England. Check out Yes Cymru for that. But it's so you can have not nationalism but cultural pride. Without it being like racist. It's funny because it's like I see it was like, you know, if someone's got like St George's Cross outside the house in the UK,
I automatically think
I think
racist.
Yeah. Whereas if someone has like, you know, I don't know, if someone has like a Welsh flag, then you're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, literally.
Dragging on it.
There is, I think it's been the England flag has just been, you know,
co-opted.
It's co-opted, and it's literally what you think when you go. And
it's a bit like a Confederate flag almost. You kind of get that vibe, you know, when you see it, you're like, Not that all people who fly Confederate flags are racist.
But I think the problem is because one obviously it's the tool that they use for, you know, the nationalists use for it's their flag, you know. So it's kind of
like the swastika or something.
It's like it's literally like the swastika. But,
and the Charlie Chaplin moustache.
Yeah,
it's been co-opted. We need to take it back.
Yeah. I won't be trialing it though. I'm involved in that one.
Yeah, we're gonna get removed from YouTube. That's what's gonna happen. Like the moment you do it, it's like, oh, nope,
Yeah,
Uh,
deplatformed.
sorry.
it is interesting though how like, because I'm obviously, I'm something of a lefty. I don't know if you know, and I think I like Greta. I think she's doing good work. I'm very proud of a 16-year-old girl like battling climate change. Maybe she's not on point on some points. Maybe she is. I don't know. But I'm excited for her, and I'm proud of her. And then I see her again kind of get this barrage of insults from other people, and I noticed that a lot of lefty types, snowflakies, we as NCPs, like we think climate change is an issue and it's something which humans have contributed to, and we need to change it. Whereas, like, this is just very generalized.
Yeah.
But you profile people, don't you? And that's that's kind of my profiling. I'm fairly generic in that way. But then other people who have more of a right leaning, they tend to be, that's where you kind of end up finding your racists and all this sort of stuff, and you end up profiling them as. So it's like birds of a feather flocking together almost. It's there's a sort of collection of ideas which people have, and I suppose that's just the way, because they have a certain outlook on the world. That's why they think that we should come together to solve problems, or no, you shouldn't. You should just look after yourself and then protect your area from people trying to come in. So it's interesting. I think it's interesting that you don't get like people on the far right, saying, "Yeah, Greta, go on, deal." And then similarly, you tend not to get people, on the far left who are advocating for strong borders and to keep the immigrants out.
I do think there's racism from the left in a different way though, which is a patronizing stuff. The patronizing, like, oh, I'm going to think for you. Oh, you're black, so you must be offended by this, or
like extreme sensitivity to the point where it's highlighted. It's creating a problem.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
I mean, but ultimately,
that's like it's a very soft form of racism, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's kind, but
it's really sensitive about how you feel.
It's something that we kind of, we don't talk not to talk about as much, but it's kind of one of the underlying things, like what they call it, the what's the word? The microaggression. That's a microaggression. Yeah, learn all about this.
What's microaggression?
It's a social justice warrior. Sorry.
I don't
use that.
You can use these terms.
Well, only I'm talking about extremes, so not normal social, the crazy social. So microaggressions. Oh yeah. Well, no, but you're not that crazy.
I don't know.
But so the microaggression is like stuff that you do inadvertently that's racist that you don't kind of realize that you're doing, almost like subliminal racism.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Yeah,
but again, I think a lot of the time though, it's not racism about the color of the skin. It's about culture. There's I think a difference between, and certainly the people like that can get panicked over an open border policy. It's not necessarily that it's the color of the people that are coming through. It's like the different traditions that will wash theirs out. So I totally believe in open borders, but I think that we actually need to be more, not tolerant, but we need to educate people that think that immigration is bad as to why it's not, rather than demonize them. So it's okay to be scared. It's okay to think that what's the word?
It's okay to think the way you think. For me, you can never change how somebody actually feels. If you tell them to act differently, you might get what you want, but they'll still keep what they actually feel, and they might even get stronger with it.
Especially if you call them the names, as
Absolutely. No, loss of culture. I mean, as long as it's not violent or oppressive culture, but loss of culture is sad, and it does suck, and it does happen as well when you have real open border policies.
But it's inevitable though.
It's inevitable. But it's a bit. What are you going to do? Like, but the alternative to me is worse. So
I think humans, like if we survive, humans will eventually be pretty much one color, because we'll all fuck
each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's inevitable. Like we started off, everyone's isolated. Indian people in India.
What about the anti-fascist movement? How do you feel about that? Because that's very topical at the moment, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's a difficult one, because it's one of these situations where the premise is
I won't say
also the premise is
anti-fascist.
good.
Actually, I should.
Antifa.
I was less Antifa. Yeah, Antifa specifically. Not
Yeah, I think
anti-fascist.
you know
So
they're out for good for the right things, but they're maybe doing it in the wrong way. Kind of like how Greenpeace, they want good, but they do crazy stuff that's damaging in certain ways.
Yeah.
I don't obviously think that they're comparable to say like the extreme right in terms of I think people have said that they're terrorists as well. I mean, there's a
They can be
description.
violent. They can be quite.
They have put
But
bombs
I mean,
in.
so like as a British person,
Hmm.
so after the Second World War, and after the demise of Hitler and the Nazi Party, a lot of the veterans came back to Britain, and Britain had a very strong fascist movement run by Oswald Mosley and his black shirts, and they would do protests and marches through London, numbering in the thousands, tens of thousands, and they had the plan to organize a huge protest of thousands and thousands of these anti-Semite. They wanted to get Jews out and all that stuff. Just all the same ideology, pretty much, as the Nazis. And their plan was to march onto the East End of London and then tell all the Jews to go home and all this stuff. So they did that. They went into the East End of London, and the Jews turned the other cheek, and like in Germany, and that was part of the how they were so easy to put on trains and sent to concentration camps was they didn't resist. And when they went into the east of London, the Jews came out. They just kicked their ass. Nice. They just leathered them, and they just wouldn't let them through. I know there's something quite British about it, though, isn't it? It's like, shut up. Just had a good scrap.
Yeah.
But that is Antifa. That's using violence to fight fascism.
Yeah.
But the argument being that it's self-defense, because if we don't do this, it'll escalate to the point where we're getting put in trains to be sent to concentration camps.
Yeah.
I hate violence. I'm a pacifist, a full pacifist. But in that scenario, I find it really hard to kind of figure out what the right thing to do is. Like, do you let those fascists walk through the east of London and get bigger as a force, or do you go and kick their ass? There's actually a really good. You go on YouTube and check it out. There's the 43 group. They were this kind of the 43 organizing members of the Jewish anti-fascist movement against Oswald Mosley and his black shirts. And they would go to these Oswald Mosley rallies, and they would just disrupt them. So Oswald Mosley couldn't, say all the things he wanted to say. And so they also prevented freedom of speech. But they didn't give a fuck. They just didn't want, the same thing to happen. What they just, some of them had actually fought in the war.
Yeah.
They didn't want that to happen in Britain, or to happen ever again. So it's a very hard topic for debate. I don't know why I sit personally on it.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me to think about because, well, one, I haven't been following it too much because I've been dealing with some of my own shit. But like what you mentioned, it's, for me also, I don't like people who are aggressive to other people without provocation. But I fully support people defending themselves. And that sort of thing's like, yeah, okay, you can't just wait until like they sort of punch at you. Like if somebody's about to like punch me,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not gonna wait until that thing hits my face. Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start doing something. Probably I'm not fast enough to do something, but if I could, I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about
You've got to be proactive.
Yeah, you got to be proactive sometimes, and sometimes being proactive is a self-defense. But I mean, I have no solution. Again, I said if they don't protest anymore out of fear because they're gonna get attacked, those feelings just build up inside, and somehow they're gonna find another way to get in. So, and you're not gonna change their fascist ideology.
No, they did. I mean, so Oswald Mosley, it destroyed the movement. Yeah, and it destroyed the black shirt movement.
Oh, okay.
It's just like, no, we're not having this here, so I just got rid of it.
Okay.
But I mean, you are interfering with their freedom of speech, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that.
Watch some of the Oswald Mosley rallies as well. I mean, it's just Hitler. It's Hitler, the British version of Hitler.
And this was after the second.
Well, this is before the war. We had a massive. We had a massive anti-fascist, a massive fascist movement. Sorry. Yeah. And then during the war, it kind of died down a little bit, but there's still a fascist movement. And then in Oswald Mosley, he met with the Nazis, and he was encouraging their fascist movement. And then post-war, it was growing as a movement, which is crazy when you think back, because so much of history kind of gets put under the carpet, doesn't it? Like, we fought the Nazis, we're the good guys. We had a little anti-fascist, we had a growing anti-fascist movement afterwards in Britain, but not anti-fascist, sorry, fascist movement in Britain afterwards. So Yeah, but it's incredibly interesting time in history. But it's re-emerging, you know, and that fight between people who, fascists and the anti-fascists, it seems to be coming into the
Realm
public
again.
Yeah.
I did with Greta. It's
Greta
one of
alone.
those things that leave Greta alone. It's one of those things where I think that it's good. You know, the intent is good. But she does seem to be literally she's manufactured. Like, you know, her mind is completely manufactured. She's had a few questions they've asked her, and she's literally like not. She's been like,
she's a kid in front of hundreds of
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, I find it hard to answer a question in front of hundreds of people.
No, well, she's definitely
which hasn't got experience or
No, but that's that's good. It's a good thing that she's doing it. But I think that, you know, being so kind of aggressive about it and finger pointy and stuff, and especially not at the right, you know, let's be honest, but go like criticizing, say, for example, the UK, like where there was reasonable recycling regimes and stuff like that, and compared to other places where there's plastic just thrown into the streets and stuff, and that's going to be a lot more likely to make it out into the ocean. I just think that the approach is just a bit too extreme, and it's got people scared. Like, you see,
well, there's this, but see,
the whole 2 month. That's been going on. There's 2 months left.
No, this for me, I'm scared, man. Like, so there was recently a report released in the UK, and it was on biodiversity and wildlife. We've lost, I think it's 85% of our species in the past 40 years, and animals in the rural UK, and it's because of intensive farming, so taking all the nutrients out of the soils. But it's to the point where we see the countryside looks nice, there's trees and there's birds, and well, there's trees and there's grass and there's stuff. But years ago, it was filled with wildlife. There were birds everywhere, there were bees and butterflies, and all that stuff's just gone. And we've got to the point now where we can't. We're looking back at video footage, we're like, oh yeah, there's all these animals in the countryside once upon a time. They're gone. And when you have a mass extinction event, it's incredibly bad for all the other animals who depend on that in the food chain. So I see climate change. I see all the disharmony in the world from a relatively small refugee crisis, say from Syria into Europe. If that turns into a large climate refugee crisis, which I believe it can, because I believe climate change is a very real thing. There's lots of, you know, good sources which say it is. And there's mass movements of people, then I can imagine war, and I can imagine death and famine, and I'm pretty scared. And I quite like that Greta, even if, like, look, we're talking about it right now, aren't we? Whereas before we weren't talking about it. We were like, so everything's fine. And even if you're against it and you think, yes, everything is still fine, at least people are talking. They're more aware that maybe all this shit we put into the atmosphere and into the ground, maybe it does have an effect. You know?
Oh well, I think it does. It has definitely has a net positive effect. It's the bit that I kind of, that I don't know, not disagree with is the scaremongering, and I do think that's bad. People with mental issues who they genuinely think the world's going to end in 2 months. You know, kids crying like at some of these events.
They should be scared though, like, because they're going to grow. So my kids are going to get into a world which I see they're going to grow into a world which is going to be much more unharmonious and much more violent and dangerous than the world which I grew up into. So you know, we're I don't know. I feel that with any resource, such as the planet and all the resources on the planet, we have a duty of care to that resource. Bitcoin's the same. It's a resource. We have a duty of care to contribute back to it, maintain it, make sure it works properly, and that's the same with our environment as well. And I think we've neglected that duty of care, and the people who are really going to suffer is our kids, and they should be scared. You know, like from my, you know, lefty, you know, snowflake point of view anyway. So that's
you know, if it sounds logical, it's reached that point where, and I agree on in terms of science. Like, the science is there. I mean, like, it's like the
comments will be going right now.
What's that?
I'm looking at the comments. You can see the comments.
But yeah, I don't know. I think that you can try and change people's mindsets without being too extreme and too. I don't know.
I mean, for me, it's it's a tricky subject because, okay, I'm going to reveal something that's a bit negative about me. I have below average faith in humanity. So even if I
don't worry.
Yeah,
I've got
probably a good company there.
Okay. Like, honestly, I don't think human beings would care enough until it's too late.
Yeah,
For
it's
anything, not
collectively.
just climate, for anything.
We're
I
quite
mean,
short-sighted.
but I think it's the way for it to change really better in terms of the environment. It's for evolutionary change instead of something super disruptive, because human beings generally don't like something disruptive. So what the solutions that need to be found, and what I hope will be the ones promoted. Greta is out there talking, but what I'm really hoping in the future is that solutions are the ones that's going to be on the stage, like stuff that will remove plastic from the oceans, stuff that
I think technology is going to obviously play a huge part in trying to undo some of the damage.
Yeah, and it's because for me it's more realistic to see damage being undone, although I understand it's harder to do that than preventing it. But just because we're so used to certain things, like we're here talking about crypto and stuff, but unfortunately I still have to sell most of the crypto that I make for fiat, because I'm connected to the mainstream world. As much as I'd like to get out and use the crypto that I get paid in, because most of my income is in crypto, I still have to use fiat, and it's more convenient because not as many places take it. Like Max,
It's the existing system. It's the status quo.
I mean, for me, Max is a hero because he actually lives it, and I can't do what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we talk the talk. Sometimes we walk the walk. He lives it. So I have full respect for him on that. And it's the same thing. Like for most people, like they can say they care about the environment and want to do something different. I'm not hitting on you on this.
No, you're dead right. Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, my habits. I'm not the most. I'm not as green as I could be, and I try to recycle, but I could be better in the products I buy. They don't have so many packaging. I don't know. I could try and buy locally and organics. It's not using putting all the pesticides into the ground
or use less. But I mean, it's a tricky thing, and sometimes it's dangerous because by choosing to buy this product that's, let's say, a little bit more green, like using recycled paper versus something that's brand new created, it's not enough. And for some people, unfortunately, they think that that's enough, and that's all they do, and they brag about it.
Or sharing a petition.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh,
yeah. Now I can kick back. Yeah.
Yeah. Now kick back. Let's
get
go
my
buy
diesel van and
and or people who I mean, I segregate my trash. I do recycling and all of that. I'm just concerned what's happening after that. Like, there's not a lot of stuff. I mean,
well, there was certain councils that were literally shipping the recycling off to India to put in a landfill. So, but I think ultimately,
that's what happens with most of our recycling. It gets put on boats. And then it gets sent to India or to originally it was China, wasn't it? But then the Chinese just said, no, we don't want any more of your crap. And the most economical thing to do with it is not to try and recycle it; it's just to landfill it
or find it cheap. Like in the Philippines, there was a news. It didn't hit international news, just in the Philippines, and it was like this company just left their trash essentially, but it was in this shipping containers, and they just left it there, and they're like, yeah, we're not gonna pick it back up. You can have it. Enjoy.
Nice parting gift.
Yeah. And it's because it's just cheap to dump stuff in cheaper countries, and I mean,
but this is hard. I mean, we like stuff, we like buying stuff, we like consuming things, we like cheap clothes we can wear, we like people being able to have access to. I went down to the shop here to get some breakfast, some grapes, and it's bountiful. So much stuff you can buy. It's all gorgeous. And that's the miracle of capitalism, the miracle of stringing the world together in these trade routes and having all that. I could think of anything I want to eat tonight. I could make that a reality. If I want lobsters and I could make that a reality. And it would sting me because it'd be expensive for the lobster, but it wouldn't sting me so much that I wouldn't recover within a week or so, or like the hiccup of it. So and that's a miracle, but it's a miracle we almost shouldn't have because that's the thing which is destroying the planet is all the crap we use and we create. But technology, so biodegradable plastics and we use that in 3D printing. It's based on cornstarch. If you could work on that technology to make it the great thing about plastics is they don't biodegrade. That's why we use them because they last forever. But that's also the worst thing about plastics and.
However, I was at a house party, flat party, and it was around about 2010 when the South Africa World Cup, the Vuvuzelas.
Oh,
And there was one thrown onto the house, the block of flats opposite, and landed on the roof. Giant, big, red, vuvuzela like that big. Within a year and a half, it disintegrated.
What's a vuvuzela? What's that?
It's like a
Yeah, but it doesn't. So what happens is, it looks like it's breaking down and biodegrading, but it's not biodegrading. It's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's these tiny little plastic particles called what are they called? Noodles? No, they're called noodles or something. There's a name for it. I can't remember. Nurbles? Maybe it's nurble. Anyways, and these tiny plastics, they then get into the food chain and then end up fish eating them, and then we consume them. We breathe a lot of them in. Like a vast proportion of house dust is made up by plastics. We're not 100%.
I thought it was human flesh.
Like human skin
Oh.
cells, maybe skin cells, but
not flesh.
there's a good percentage. There's a good percentage, like 10 to 20% is plastics. Like, but the answer is to not stop. It is to try and curb our usage of plastics until we can find a valid alternative, which is the technology. The technology can help solve this problem by making biodegradable plastics. Something which is really tough and hard, but after a month it will just go.
Actually, the university I went to, the University of Washington, we this was a decade ago. Like, geez, all of the utensils at the cafeterias and things, it was all using biodegradable stuff, and it was actually harder than plastic.
Wow,
it was only bad if you ate soup with the spoon.
It's the heat thing.
Because the heat thing, it made it melt. But with the forks and knives, I could cut meat easier with that than a plastic utensil. And it was great because, if I would have it in a box, all I need to do is just throw it in the compost.
Man, I mean, I've got my 3D printer at home and I use PLA, and that's the one based on cornstarch. And the reason it's good for a 3D printer is it's got quite a low melting point. Like not so low that you could probably eat a bowl of soup with a spoon made from it. Maybe not, mate. Maybe not. Maybe it would deform over time, like it wouldn't work.
Oh yeah.
But I've noticed just in the few years I've been using my 3D printer, there's better versions of PLA which have like a higher melting point, which have come out. So hopefully that's the stuff which people will work on.
Thing is with the climate change argument that we should stop doing X or stop doing Y is, to me, I think it's really it's not valid, because I would argue that, say, for example, the reason why I'm thinking Bitcoin mining, because that's probably going to be one of the biggest targets. Greta's going to be she's against the corn, probably. But we believe it's necessary because of the idea of and the concept of proof of work.
But Christian Russo's got a really good argument to this. He says big miners. So I think that a miner is a security expert who's employed on behalf of the users to secure the network. And they're big companies with real world. They're not cypherpunk crypto anarchists. They're not hidden. They're not invisible. To the governments and the larger population. They're points which can be held to account. And if a miner chooses to use horrible, dirty diesel or coal or whatever to power their miners, then they could be held to account. And just as other companies are held to account and they have green policies and they try and use renewables, and have like carbon neutral, again, buy carbon credits and things, like they're points which can actually be held to account. So like proof of work is not like a dirty thing. It's just the way in which you wish to commit. How are you going to commit your energy to do it? So,
but then and what I was alluding to is the fact that we believe it's necessary, and there's X, Y, and Z reason. What's to say that why are we using PlayStation? The example of all the PlayStations and Xboxes on 4 hours a day playing, and the rest standby is the same amount of as we use for Bitcoin energy consumption. So if we're saying that Bitcoin mining is bad, it's wasteful, blah blah blah, well then so is playing a PlayStation. So is building a theater and people getting together, and all of these things are wasteful, could be deemed wasteful. And then we're just into the realm of deciding what people should and shouldn't do. And I'd even argue that, gonna throw it out there, not arguing, it's not like a strong point. I've probably I've completely stitched myself up now with this one. But I find it funny when an Extinction Rebellion, there's there was a few sort of, watch the videos of huge people, like, as in very big,
carbon
very,
footprint.
yeah. I'm like,
methane.
you can't, like, well, not just the methane, but
Yeah.
the consumption. If it's
Yeah,
consumption,
absolutely, yeah.
so I think that it does seem like it's a very finger pointy thing, and you
Yeah,
can,
that's fair.
and there's, you can go down to whatever level of detail you can do a bit, or hardly anything at all. But I think as long as, like, we continue putting policies in place,
Yeah.
and the technology's there, and people will make, there are charities and stuff that are encouraging
Yeah.
all sorts of
Yeah, I mean, energy consumption's good.
Mm.
As society has developed throughout history, it's the amount of energy a society uses as it develops increases. So the more, and this is more energy you use, the more developed your society is, technologically wise. So the consuming of more and more and more energy, even though when we compare it to previously when we didn't consume that much energy, it's because we're building stuff like Bitcoin, for example. It's just how you source the energy. Like energy is abundant, We've got this massive nuclear ball in the sky we can't even look at because it's so, smashing down energy which burns our skin, and if you can get a magnifying glass and set fire to a little bit of paper, whatever, just with the amount of energy just to contain just in that small amount of light. Like energy is abundant, we just need to be able to harness it, in a way which I think we're doing. Like look at the electric cars and look at the solar panel development. And
I would say also, like, it's important to use an energy source, well, that's easier for individuals to get. Like it's actually ideal for us to move towards energy that we can get on our own. Like solar, water, wind, because it's, I mean, maybe some people here or some people watching have enough money to go get an oil drill and start drilling and get their own oil, but most of us can't. Most of us never will. And so we will always be tied down to, the oil cartel. Yes, there are more than one companies. Sure, you can have a little bit of a free market, but let's face it, there's only a few of them out there. Meanwhile, with what I just mentioned with solar, water, and wind, you can actually choose to, referencing the HCPP from last year, opt out of the system a bit better.
It's autonomy, isn't it?
You can be more autonomous.
Your own energy.
Actually, for Bitcoin miners, it makes sense to do that because it's only a matter of time before, like, the electrical companies that use fossil fuels will say, like, no, we won't power you because the government said so or whatever. But if you're generating your own energy, or not generating, but acquiring it by yourself without asking a third party, unless you have to ask permission from the sun, you get more independent that way.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm sure hopefully we'll look back and we'll be like, what, we used crude oil dug out from the ground, like using fracking or whatever, or gas using fracking to power stuff. That's stupid. Like, look how much energy we're harnessing.
Look at the sun.
It's
a giant,
extremely efficient solar panel.
Freaking multi.
And the sea,
nuclear reactor
stood next to the ocean when it's moving. The amount of energy that's contained, just moving back and forth. So no, it's abundant, and hopefully now we need a lot more energy. We'll find the appropriate places to get it from.
Why hasn't anyone created a giant magnifying glass that, like, focuses on, I don't know, like a thing of water that powers the steam?
They got energy. So I think it's in, like, I can't remember where it's in southern Spain somewhere. They'll have, like, a field. It's kind of like that. It's a field of mirrors.
Yeah.
And the mirrors all point to the same point.
Yeah.
And that heats the water, which then spins a turbine.
That's pretty ninja.
Yeah, it's cool. And then, do you know what's cool as well? Like, so some of these solar farms. So when you have a lot of sun and you put up solar farms, underneath the solar farms, you start to collect condensation and it cools the ground down. And what they've noticed is you get a lot of plants in a very arid climate. You'll start having a lot of plant growth under the solar panels. So there is some symbiosis towards agriculture, and then also in the hot countries where they need to be able to do agriculture and solar panels, because you're taking that energy away as opposed to it going in the ground, which means you can then grow stuff. That's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing which is going to save us, hopefully. But then how do you? I'm robots. Robots will do the work for us.
So I think we're probably rounding up now. Are we mad Bitcoins? How's things?
I think we're about ready to end the live stream here because I know Ben has to go to a panel before too long. We're almost at 5 hours straight. We're at 4 hours and 43 minutes. So that's a pretty good free live stream, right?
Well, this is all good auditioning time for one of those like chat channels where they've got to just talk continuously. So yeah, I'm going to use this as my stepping stone.
Just talk at the camera, those
Yeah.
American chat things. Yeah, it's weird as a UK guy looking at one of those. Like, what the hell was this? There's some guy just talking at the screen for 3
But,
hours.
yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow. Hopefully, all the people I asked today who wouldn't come on today will come on tomorrow, and then. I can't believe it, but I guess it's a 3-day conference, so maybe we'll be back again the next day. We might do 3 days of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty tired now, but I guess we're going to do more of this. Maybe I can eat more food, drink more water, have more health. That'd be good. Also, I'm getting a headache from not wearing my glasses, so I started wearing my glasses again. So I'm totally breaking character. All the kids at home are screaming. Goofy took his head off. Mickey took his head off. Oh, my God. If there's questions, you could put questions in now, but I do want to save what's left of Ben's voice for his panel.
It's actually been really good for me, because I was sat over there getting ready for the panel. I was thinking, because I'm so flipping hungover, I can't speak. How am I going to be able to do a panel? So just exercising my mouth, talking.
And this
really
is a
helpful.
panel.
Yeah.
The other good trick from Roger Ebert is you just talk softer, and everyone listens in very closely, and the whole room gets silent.
It's a Noam Chomsky,
because you're talking softer.
And you'll be end up falling asleep eventually.
That's right. But I'm gonna go ahead and push the button, turn it off, and then maybe pack up some of this gear. And Mike Dupree is our only fan, but Mike's sad. Bye, Mike. You're gonna have to turn over and watch the panels on the other channel. Check out the Mad Bitcoins Twitter. We've got lots of links to TCCconf, which is still broadcasting live in the other room. They've got a great setup, professional live streaming guys, big heavy box, monitors, and all these things. It's pretty amazing. But check that out on the TCConf Twitter or at Mad Bitcoins. Mike says our friend Risto can go 8 hours talking. You guys are way far behind. So you need to practice it up. And that also means he'll just do it alone. He's just by himself. He's impressive. But yeah, even the idea of that gives me a headache. But we'll be back again tomorrow with even more TCCconf live from Transylvania. Check it out. Until next time, bye-bye.